Hello, Dr. Kirk. This is Jeremiah. I will be reshooting Chapter 10 on conflict and negotiations. Whenever you're in an organization, you have people, and wherever there's people, there's bound to be conflict. So, therefore, all organizations have to deal with the thing called conflict. And the nature of conflict, there are things that we'll cover in this presentation. It will be the nature of conflict, interpersonal conflict and management strategies, the conflict process, the negotiation process, and then I have a question that I will have them answer. Talking about the nature of conflict, conflict is a disagreement that when two or more parties uh, perceive that there is a threat against their interests, needs, or conclusion. You either have a thing, or you ever have a reaction in either a positive way or in a negative way. One, if it's a positive, you're thinking it as constructive. You're picking it up and you are going to try to learn from it, trying to find different possibilities to solve. If it is destructive or dysfunctional, you are really doing the blame game. You're pointing at things. You're saying this is the reason why this happened, and there are very different, really many reasons on why you may take either or one thing. What makes it either constructive or destructive is not the conflict itself, but primarily how you react toward that conflict. There's some common sources for conflicts, like different tasks, like do you have the different task goals or different process goals? You may think about interpersonal conflicts. Do you guys have the same personality type? Do you get along with them? Resource constraints. Is there enough resources that are going around? Change, different values, poor communication, which I'm in this class to help me out with. Also, being interdependent on someone, waiting for them to get done with a process so you can start, or vice versa. You need to get done so they can start. Then you have the structural conflict between the individuals that you are colleagues with, and then higher ups or subordinates for that fact. The nature of conflict. The conflict is either going in two ways, either going to escalate or de-escalate. We have a good thing on conflict escalation that points out when one party is involved in the conflict and they get madder, and that in turn gets someone else who they're in the conflict with madder. And as long as you keep processing those things, it's harder to reverse. So it's easier to really take it, try to reverse it uh, at an earlier part than it is at a later part. Frederick Gossel has 9 stages that he points out about conflict escalation that you should definitely take a look at. And if you're trying to de-escalate, there's some do's and some don'ts. One of the do's would be empathetic, listen. When I say listen, I mean attentively listen. Also, use time. Sometimes it's good just to delay a little bit, not to go right back into it. Control your body language. Cast vision about a win-win situation. Things you don't do, you try to avoid being hostile. Try to avoid raising your voice, minimizing the situation to that individual, and then focus on your emotion. Focus on the solution and not so much on the emotion of the situation. Emotions can either turn something in a positive direction or in a negative direction. And what we want to do, we want to make sure that we have a positive interaction. We have to think about management skills or management styles when dealing with conflict. There are 5 that are outlined in our books. The win-win would be a collaboration. You both talk, you both give and take. Compromise is mostly about you both win some and you both lose some. And so that's another way to look at it. Competing means there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser. Accommodating is more of it's really not that important to me, so I'll let you win. Or it's really not that important. The conflict is not something that is really allowing us to go anywhere, so we're gonna step away from it. I'm gonna accommodate you. Avoiding is just pretty much just saying that what conflict and kick the can down the road. And so that's never a positive. I don't think And maybe if it's nothing so important that you don't want to even bring it up, then I can see how you could employ the avoiding strategy there. Uh, Conflict, then you have to start thinking of how can I put all these things together and come up with a conflict process. There are 4 skills that every manager need to have when they're doing with conflict resolution. The first one that I would definitely point out would be an attentive listener. Attentive listener is just not but it's actually paraphrasing, summarizing, making eye contact, making sure that we have that you're understanding them. Ask questions for clarification. Communicate through your nonverbal smile. Allow them to know that, hey, I am very much listening to you. And then mediating with, we're trying to mediate with a win-win situation for both sides. The negotiation process, what negotiation is a process of 2 or more parties that make offers, counter offers, and concessions that they can reach an agreement. There are many types. It's 2 forms of it. There is the distributive negotiation and the interrogative negotiations. There are 4 fundamental principles in the integrative negotiations. Those 4 things would be to separate the people from the actual problem, focus on the interest, not on the certain position that you're taking, invest or invent options so that everyone will be able to maximize the goal or things that you're trying to offer up to them, and insist on objective fairness throughout. Make sure that they know that there's going to be a fair thing that you're going to apply across the board. I think those would be good things to include as the 4 fundamental principles. Then there are cultural issues, understanding that when you're dealing with internationals or people from a different culture, that there are things that are said that not only that you're negotiating with one another, but you're negotiating just through the way that you're interacting with them from the time that you meet them. For alternatives, if things don't work out the way that it needs to work out, to disputes or resolutions, you may have to do conciliation, mediation, arbitration, and use the abusement. Those are all things that each one receives a little power or no power to help to consolidate the argument or try to bring a resolution to the conflict. Well, that's all that I have for you. I have a couple things that I wanted to point out in conclusion. That argument is constructive or destructive. Conflict is all about the party's response to the conflict, not about the conflict itself. Also, the further conflict escalates, the harder it is for you to reverse it. And the last one, control your emotions actually controls perception of the conflict. So my question that I leave you with is based on the common source of conflict. Based on the common source of conflicts, which of them do you interact with most in your current position, and how do you bring the conflict to resolution? Thank you, and have a great day.